start recording, and once the meeting is over, the link to the lecture is going to be available on the module website, whether it's on Teams or on Moodle. Okay, so project management. I'm just going to go over what we're going to cover today. It's fairly straightforward class. So we have project management, and the outline for today is we're going to talk about what the module involves, and that means the content that we're covering, and also what probably the thing that you're interested most in, which is how we're going to grade this. And here is another thing up for discussion. And then the second part of today's lecture is going to focus on the topic of time management, and should be short and sweet, and I hope to be done way before 9 today. Just kind of start us into it. But I'm also going to talk about some of the other stuff that we're going to cover, which is going to be way heavier than today. But anyway, so module breakdown. Let's take a look. So I have to I'll tell you how it had been done previously. So previously we had a 50% continuous based assessment and 50% final exam. And the previous 2 years, I had people grouped in groups of 3 and 4, where they had to, I suppose, carry out a project and write a project report on the project that they carried out. So the first year, which was 3 years ago, people assumed that the project was a construction project, and then they would write a report on the imagining running of that project. I didn't really like that idea because it was all hypothetical and there wasn't really any practice. I was just kind of imagining what running a project is like, which isn't really very good. So last year, people were actually given a project. So the project was to write a report on the potential of use of atomic energy in Irish energy system. And the report, so they had to write that report, and the project was the production of that report. So they had to write a project report on how they planned for that essay, let's say, how they planned for it, how they communicated, how they dealt with any risks that they might have identified, and so on. So they would carry out all the exercises that a project manager would do in a project setting, which I liked a little bit more because people actually practiced the kind of project management techniques that we were looking at. But this year, it's not, I don't think it's possible because everything is delivered online, and because it's delivered online, it means we can't really have group projects. So I have to replace the CBAs. Well, I think I have to replace CBA of the project report with POP assignments, quizzes, and short open-ended questions. And I suppose the floor is open if you have any opinions on this. That would mean that over the next 12 weeks, you will have a whole bunch of CBA going on. So there will be quizzes, short 200 words type of questions to answer, and POP assignments that would be due, let's say, a week or 2 weeks later, something in those lines. So if you have an opinion on this, now is the time to talk. Going once, going twice. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. I didn't hear anybody disagreeing with this or offering alternative suggestions, which is fine by me. So over the next 12 weeks, you will find yourselves having to do little assignments with about a week deadline, short 5 to 10 question quizzes on the material that is currently being covered, and short, say about 200 to 150 words, open-ended questions. So yeah, cool, we'll do that. And then the other 50% of this module is 50% final exam. And previously it was 4 questions, standard LIT exam. But because again, this year we're expecting that the exam is not going to be possible to deliver in a standard manner, I'm going to replace it with an exam that simulates the project management professional exam. So where you would have a book and you would have a number of multiple choice questions. So we'll do that, and the MCQ will be on the content of project management module only. So we won't really look at some of the other things that we're going to do. So yeah, the exam will be open book and it will be delivered online. So these are the 2 assessment strands that I see happening for this module. Are there any questions? If you have a question, just unmute yourself and fire away. There is also, I think there's a chat window here. Yeah, there's a chat window. You can add a question into the chat window and I will try to address it in due time. So if you don't want to talk, just pop it into the chat window and that will be okay as well. Okay, so what we're covering. Yeah, so there are really 5 pillars here. The first 3 columns that are fairly soft, so that's going to take us about 3 weeks to go through this 1 lecture on each of the topics. So today we're going to talk about time management, a little bit about philosophy and a few techniques that you might want to use or even consider. And again, most people, I would say at this stage, should have seen some of the time management content that's available out there, so that it won't be anything new. Next week, we're going to look at learning. So how does learning work on the brain, and suggestion on some of the science-based effective learning techniques. Some of them will be quite counterintuitive, I guess, but again, it's still good to know, because being able to learn better means that you can learn more in a shorter period of time, and that might make you a more effective individual long term. We're going to take a look at decision making, so some of the problem solving models and problem solving techniques that would be commonly used in a project management setting, and we're also going to take a look at decision tree analysis and how to carry that out. Excuse me. And that will conclude our soft skill section. That will be about 3 weeks. And then for the remaining 9 weeks, we're going to take a look at organization and project management. So we're going to have to consider organization as a unit of doing work, let's say, and also we're going to have to look at structures of organizations. So how do organizations form into functional units? How do organizations work within those functional units? What are the alternatives to functional organizations, like matrix or project-based organizations? And all of this is done to create context for the project management. And let me just pop up a project management presentation that I've been working on over the last while, so that at least this will be a little bit of foreshadowing of what's to come. Okay, so let me just get to the slide that I want. Okay, so sorry about that. So project management, essentially, we're going to look at how project management how how can we run project management in order to deliver objectives, and some of the more modern ways of thinking about project management, including Agile and Scrum. And we're also going to actually talk in detail about what does it mean to do project management and how project management is carried out in an organization. So this diagram is the thing on the left. I wish I could use a laser pointer in this, but it doesn't appear to be available. So on the left, you have what the project management is essentially going to cover. So we have 10 knowledge areas within project management. We have 10 knowledge areas, and those 10 knowledge areas are allocated within process groups. And those process groups are listed. They don't really matter that much. And we're going to look at the processes that are carried out at each of the stages of the project lifecycle. So from starting the project through organizing and preparing, through carrying out the work, and towards ending the project. We're going to look at the knowledge areas required and process groups within those knowledge areas that help us achieve the goal of the project. And the main objective for doing this is so that we have a better understanding of the common methodology. We understand what the terminology means, and we have a way of thinking about project management as it's done in organizations. And kind of in a little bit more detail, if you can look, if you see in the top left of the slide, within every knowledge area within any group of the project management, you could have a process, and the process is a technical term, which means that for given inputs, you use tools and techniques to arrive at some outputs. And that's actually literally what is happening during the process, during the project management. You have some inputs to a process, and you have some outputs from the process. So for instance, you could have a document inputs into the process of planning for project management, and the output of that process would be your project management plan. And we're going to talk about the kind of inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs that we're going to have for the 49 processes. And I hope to be able to cover the 49 processes, but if not, then that's okay as well. This is it's a limited time frame, so we can only cover as much as we can. And then if you just take a look again on the left of this slide, the table is a very nice summary of the knowledge areas that are involved in the project management. So project management, project integration management, which is the kind of overarching area, all the way to project stakeholder management, project communication management, and so on and so forth. And within all of those areas, you have some specific process groups. So initializing, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing. And within those process groups, you have specific processes. So for instance, looking at project scope management, you have process of planning scope management, you have process of collecting requirements, you have the process of defining scope, and you have the process of creating a work breakdown system. So there is a number of processes within that process group, and if you look at the monitoring process group, you have a process of validating scope and controlling scope. So we're going to see what each of those processes means, and what are the inputs, the tools and techniques, and the outputs that are required. So hopefully that will allow us to talk about project management in a meaningful way. So that's going to be the second part of the content delivery. So that will start probably early October, or late September type of thing. So let me go back to the previous presentation. Yeah, that's not a big fan of this Teams stuff, but anyway. Okay, so we're back to the time management. So the main topic of this is really how to manage your time, and I'm delivering it because I think it's important to cover. But for me, learning about time management is also work in process. So some of the tools and techniques that I list over here are the ones I use. Some of them are the ones I have used before. Some of them I haven't used. And if you have any other suggestions, you can always bring them in here. But the kind of the main objective of doing this is to start you on thinking about developing a way of managing your time if you don't have one. And if you have one, that's very good. This might help you kind of reiterate on the process, make your way of managing time better, or you know validate the method that you're doing because it's already very good. So this kind of really a truism, and time is money. This is the only currency that we have that we can't get back according to the laws of physics, and we have to deal with the set amount of time that we have. And if you took a page and on each page put a square where a square is a week, you would find that for an average life you have 52 by about 80, which is 4,000 weeks, which turns out to, if you have squares that are small enough, you can cover that page in quite easily. Or if you don't want to do weeks, you can do months. Average life is probably about 900 months or so. And again, you'll find that the page is filled fairly easily. And if you mark your age on a page, it turns out that for for many people like my age, getting closer to half of the page. So time is running out for all of us, for better or for worse, I guess. And it would be useful to figure out a way of maximizing the value that we can get from the time that we have. And to say that time is money is probably an understatement, because you can always make more money, but there is no way to make more time. According to the laws of physics that we have at the moment. So we have to figure out a way to maximizing the time that we have, maximizing the value output out of it. So what we want to achieve through the process of time management, we want to achieve a level of value output and stress. So for instance, if we have no time management, and so on the y-axis we have the value output, on the x-axis we have the stress input, let's say. So if you have a lot of stress and a lot of management, you'll burn out because you're spending too much energy on the management side of things, and you might be getting the value output out of that, but there is a penalty on this. On the other side, if you have no time management, you might have some level of happiness, but the value output out of the having no time management means that no time management means that the value that you're creating is probably less than optimum. Maybe you're very productive anyway without any time management, so well, fair play to you if that's the case. But if you don't have a natural inclination to productivity, if you're not naturally conscientious, having no time management system in place might be detrimental to your output. So in the end of the day, we want to be kind of we want to have sufficient amount of time management, so that we don't stress ourselves over our value output, and we can create the value that we want. And FedEx is the symbol, I guess, for it, because being a complex organization responsible for delivering millions of packages every day, they really have to optimize how they manage the time in transit, so that the time in transit for all the packages is minimized, because for FedEx, shorter transit means more money. People pay for short transit. So we want to kind of figure out a way that will allow us to manage our time and maximize our output. So a couple of ways to do that are available, I guess. And we're going to take a look at some of the foundations for it. So the first and probably the most important thing is that if you want to manage your time, you have to take control of what you're doing, and that means that you probably need to avoid the situation where you're only responding to your circumstances. You probably need to start taking more active control in what's happening with your life. You have to start thinking about what you are doing and why are you doing this. There is a famous computer scientist called Richard Hamming, and he's the developer of Hamming codes, which are the error correcting codes that really help us use teams. They're responsible for detecting errors during the signal transfer across distances. And Hamming, one of the most important suggestions that Hamming has about the most important thing an individual can do at the start, in the middle, or towards the end of their career is to figure out where they want to get so that they can build a path towards that objective. So that's why we need to start thinking about what are we doing, why are we doing this, and then maybe figure out where is the place we want to get. So if you want to take control of your life, you have to start asking this question, and then if you can answer this question, then the follow on from this would be to start figuring out how can you get to where you're trying to get, and not even that, you want to figure out the most painless way, or the way where there is the least amount of friction in order for you to get to where you want to get. And also, there's always the alternative question. What's the penalty of me deciding to not to do what I'm trying to do? Because maybe it turns out that what you really, what your goal should be, and what your goal demands, is that you abandon what you're doing at the moment and dedicate your time and resources towards doing something else, which would bring you closer to your goal. And that's what the planning helps with. So we'll go over planning in a minute, but it would be useful to plan, plan weeks in detail, quarters in a kind of general sketch, let's say, and a year really in the most general terms possible, so that at least you kind of have an idea of, it would be nice to achieve this year. It would be, so this quarter I'm probably going to achieve this and this. And then if you know what your goals are for each quarter, what you should do is, with the view of these goals, plan months and weeks accordingly. And we're going to go over planning weeks and months in a little bit more detail in a second. And last but not least, it would be useful to have deadlines, and we'll go over a reason why again in just a second. But deadlines help you with putting boundaries on your work. You can dedicate more resources to your activity if it turns out that your deadlines are getting closer and you're not up to date with the work. Obviously, that means that you need to control your output and control the trajectory of your work against the plan. But that's the part of the project management that we're going to be talking about. So if you establish fake deadlines, at least you know the boundary, and the fake deadline means that you can always update it to something different and also fake. So at least that's totally up to you. So this just, a very broad view of this idea. So if you're really focusing on planning, I can't overstate the importance and the utility of the to-do lists. If you can write down on a paper or in some sort of an online tool that you would prefer to use, if you can write down the things that you want to do, and then you can simply do them because you know what to do. The first point about breaking things down into small manageable steps is very important. So say you have your 30,000 feet or 10,000 meters view of where you would like to get. You kind of see the broad picture. And as you zoom in, so that broad picture would be where you want to be, say, in a year to 5 years. And as you zoom in or get to the lower altitudes, you start seeing goals that you need to achieve on the way to your long-term objective. So now you have broken up your grand overarching goal into some smaller manageable steps. And each of the smaller manageable steps can be broken down again to something that's even smaller and more manageable until you achieve tasks that are so easy to carry out that really require no energy dedication from you. So for instance, if your objective is to, let's say I'm going to freeball here. If my objective is to learn how to fly a plane in next 2 years, the thing that, you have to learn how to fly, you have to research the legalities of it, you have to figure out the ways of where the nearest school is. So the thing that I could do right now is just to click and open a new tab and open Google. That's a task that I can do right now. It's a very simple task, but it brings me a little step closer to my overarching objective. And obviously, most of the goals that are so small, you wouldn't really write them down, but you would probably write down goals that would be meaningful indicators of progress on your way to the grand overarching goals. So yeah, that's why you would want to break things out into small manageable steps. You want to break things out into break the goals down into things that are so small or so manageable that there is really no friction in you doing those things. That there is really there is no way. There is always a way, but the possibility that you would refuse to do the thing that you should do is absolutely minimized. So then another principle, I guess I would suggest is to do the ugly thing first, or as the management consultants call it, it's to eat the frog. Because the frogs are the things, tasks, and activities that we tend to postpone or put on the back burner as long as possible, because either they have no value to us, or we have no knowledge of how to do them, or they're simply not pleasant to do. However, if we make a conscious decision of doing those difficult and ugly things first, we can just get rid of them. And if there's no ugly thing in front of us, we can start picking and choosing things that are more important. And maybe in the process of doing the ugly thing, we figure out that we actually don't even need to do it anymore, and this can be discarded from our to-do list. And finally, if we don't have any ugly things that are facing us, really the only way to work is by priority. And there is a tool that helps us figure out the priority, which I'll talk about in a second. The kind of go-to philosophy for doing things is David Allen's GTD method, or the abbreviation stands for getting things done. Allen is he's a popular management consultant. He wrote a book and a follow-up book on getting things done, really popular actually, and he's got a lot of actionable advice in there. But I would suggest that if you want to read the book, or if you read it, it's kind of pick and choose, because the methodology is kind of rigid. It's very effective when it's done exactly as he suggests, but it's kind of rigid. And it mightn't be suitable to people's personalities. However, there are ideas in there that I think are super important. So the first idea is that in the process of doing things, which the kind of management consulting word for is the workflow, but in the process of doing things, you should aim to capture everything. So ideas, things to do, fleeting targets, things like that. In ideal case scenario, you would have a way of capturing them. So now with phones, taking notes, adding voice memos, adding to-dos to your to-do lists would be a thing to do. Or you could use pen and paper and carry on a little notebook with you and just write things down as they show up in front of you. David Allen suggests that if you don't capture things, then your brain has to dedicate some mental resources in order to keep track of the thing that you don't have captured on paper. And because you have to dedicate the resources there, until the thing is either captured or completed, your brain is always keeping tracks of things that it probably shouldn't be keeping track of. And if you vacate the space in your brain, you will be able to occupy that space with things that are more meaningful or valuable to your long-term performance. So David Allen is the proponent of this idea of looking at things from different levels. So you look at the thing you're doing right now, then you're figuring out how is that thing bringing you to your current project or current medium or short-term objectives or goals. Then you figure out how the projects that you're doing are bringing you to your medium and long-term objectives. And then in the overarching grand scheme of things, Alan suggests that things that you do and goals that you're trying to achieve should in some way align with your values. So things, ideas, philosophies that you find important. Maybe I don't know, maybe you are very passionate about climate change, which is a current topic. So maybe you need to be working on projects that would, I don't know, help you in satisfying that value, or that value of yours. Maybe you're passionate about dog racing, so maybe this is something that you're really passionate about. Maybe your projects and things that you're doing should be bringing you closer or more in alignment with that passion. Anyway, each to their own. It's all very individual and very personal, but in the grand scheme of things, Alan is definitely suggesting that having a vision and then aligning your goals and objectives with that vision would be a useful thing to do. Two of the more actionable things are that Alan suggests is, so first of all, he suggests that when you're doing things, or maybe even a step back before you start doing things, when you decide what to do, what should help you in making that decision is this idea of let's say maybe a box from which you take the actions from, and those boxes would be, for instance, areas of responsibility. If you're at work, you shouldn't be doing things that belong to home. If you're at home, you probably shouldn't be doing things that belong to work. If you're in school, you probably shouldn't be doing things that belong in your GAA club, and so on and so forth, unless there is some overlap. So areas of responsibility, areas and actually locations even, where you are at a given time in a given moment should inform the decision you make about the next thing to do. And then the next thing is the energy level. So there are tasks that require plenty of focus and plenty of energy. Most of things that people do these days are mental tasks. So let's talk about it in terms of mental energy. If you kind of, in the process of looking at yourself, develop a skill to know that actually my mental capacity right now is only 10% of what I'm normally capable of, because you're tired and you haven't had a sandwich in 5 hours, and you had a long and arduous conversation with your boss about some project that you need to deliver in 2 days. You probably shouldn't be working to complete the difficult tasks that bring the project to completion, just because you don't have mental capacity for it. You need to take a nap and have that sandwich. But at the same time, maybe you could clean up your desk, or maybe you could water the plants around the office or around your home, or whatever else, like something that doesn't require energy but has to be done as well. So Alan suggests that we should develop skill and an ability to discern between those those energy levels, the areas of responsibility, the context within which the action is taken. And for me, I think the most important thing is that if any task that you're if any of the tasks that comes in front of you takes less than 2 minutes, you should do it immediately. You get a letter, you open up a page, and rather than you read the page and you put it into your letterbox. If it takes less than 2 minutes to file that letter, you should do it. Any task that takes less than 2 minutes, it should be done immediately. You'd be surprised how many tasks can be done in less than 2 minutes. And maybe at the start, it mightn't be very easy for you to identify tasks that take 2 minutes or less. But as you develop experience and have done those tasks a lot, you kind of develop the ability to know, okay, this is going to take about a minute, so let's just do it right now. And then it's off the, it's off your table. You can move on to something that's more important, or something that's going to bring you closer towards your goal. So that's David Allen method. And though I'm going to post a link to the book that details the intricacies of the method, I guess. Then again, this is much simpler tool, but equally powerful. So this is called the Eisenhower matrix. Eisenhower, American general, who was the head of the chief of staff, I think, joint chief of staff during World War II. So he was in charge of Allied armies, and Eisenhower developed a way to identify the tasks that he should focus on. And in this matrix on the left, so in the vertical columns, you would separate tasks into tasks that are not important or important. Anytime a task comes in front of you, you could easily figure out whether it's something that's important or not important, and immediately, because that would direct you towards the box in the matrix. And then the next thing that you could do is to categorize those tasks based on whether they are urgent, which means whether they have to be done within a reasonably short frame of time, and that frame of time is totally up to you. If within your line of business an urgent task is a task that needs to be completed within a week, then that's an urgent task. If you're in line of business that an urgent task is a task that needs to be completed today, that's an urgent task for you. So we need to categorize the task based on whether they're important or not important, and urgent or not urgent. And based on those two categorizations, you develop a neat way of deciding what to do with each task. So the first one, if something is urgent and important, you do it now. There is you can be penalized for not doing the task at the moment. There is an immediate value to be gained from completing the task right now, just because it's urgent. If something is important and not urgent, then you decide when to do it. And probably it takes you less than 2 minutes, so you decide when to do it and you schedule it and you put it into your calendar, which is another tool we should be using for time management. So if it's important and not urgent, you schedule it. And then if it's not important, not important but urgent, you should delegate. And the project management 101, the first and the most important things: delegate everything. For pretty much all the tasks that you're facing, you should find someone else that can do it for you. Obviously, that's not really entirely true, but you'd probably be surprised. There are probably people, whether within your organization or within your vicinity, that have time and ability to complete the tasks that you might have to complete, and also are willing to do it. So if you can delegate away. Find somebody who can do it for you if the task is urgent and not important. And if it's not urgent and not important, just get rid of it. No point in thinking about it. Like if it ever becomes urgent, or if it ever becomes important, it will show up in front of you again, and that's why you can and that's when you can decide to do it now, or you can decide when to do it in the future. So this is the Eisenhower matrix, and it's a powerful tool for time management and for the decision making on the activities that you want to carry out. And then the third thing that I think is probably a truism at this stage, but it's very important, are the two things. So first of all, if you have a task and you have a deadline for that task, you're probably going to finish the task right before the deadline. And that's because of Parkinson's law, which suggests that work tends to fill out the time allocated to complete it. So if you have a task that generally takes about a day to complete, but you have 3 days to complete it, you're probably going to finish the task on the third day, just because of the lack of urgency in doing the task on day one, or day 1.5, and then not enough reward from doing the task immediately. So become aware of the Parkinson's law. At least then you can avoid chasing deadlines when they when they show up. Another thing to become familiar with is the Pareto's principle. Pareto was an Italian mathematician who was studying I think he was studying distribution of offsprings in nature. I can't remember. He lived in like 16th or 17th century, in 1600, so that's 17th century. And what he noticed was that for some species of mammals, majority of offspring are due to small number of males. And he realized that the vital few are responsible for the majority of offspring output in this case. And actually, it turns out that Pareto's law is present pretty much everywhere in the world. They even put it into Bible. Those who have will be given more. Those who don't have will have everything taken away from them. I'm paraphrasing, but I think the line goes something like this. So Pareto principle suggests that things there is a small amount of things that have the highest impact. So there's the small amount of activities that have highest impact for your general performance, as the 20-80 rule. So 20% of the input accounts for the 80% of the output. If you do the difficult and ugly thing first thing in the morning, that's 20% of your time, but the difficult and ugly thing might be responsible for majority of your income over the next little while. If you have some issues in your process or in your projects, you might find that the majority of the issues are caused by a small minor amount of things. So again, it's important to become aware of this, because then based on Pareto principle, you can start figuring out what are the things that you could do at the moment that will have the biggest impact. But obviously, as it says here in the slide, good judgment comes from experience, but experience comes from bad judgment. So in ideal case scenario, we would become experienced based on bad judgment of other people. But that's not always the case. People tend to repeat mistakes of the past, despite our willingness to learn, or lack of it, I guess. So maybe because of our lack of willingness to learn. However, if we really want to maximize our value output, let's say, it would be useful to start developing this ability for noticing bad judgment and then developing experience from it. So this leads to the idea of the reflective process, which is beyond the scope of this lecture, but is a fairly pregnant area of research where the ways of reflection, the ways of writing reflections down, the methods of carrying the reflection are being looked at for their effectiveness. So anyway, to maximize your impact, you should figure out what are the vital few actions that you can do at any given time. And then it would be useful to know yourself. So a couple of things that people should do in order to become familiar with yourself outside of the things listed there. It would be nice to know the kind of personality you have, and really, if you ever have done any personality tests, that's fine. But any of the personality testing modules, I guess, or approaches that are not the big five, traits based are essentially hokum. They're non-reproducible. There is zero science to support them, or minimal science to support them. So we should treat them as garbage that they are. And the only way to actually learn about yourself in a meaningful fashion that actually is based on some solid evidence is by looking at the 5 traits. So this is and I'm not sure if I remember them right. So you would have conscientiousness, you would have neuroticism, openness to experience, extroversion, and whatever A is. So I don't know what A stands for. So there is another one that escapes me now. But they're called the big 5 traits, and there are tests that are available online that are free. That you might want to do in order to figure out whether you are highly open to experience, or whether you're conscientious, or whether you are neurotic, and neuroticism is the last one, you know. And based on those, you can maybe develop strategies that would maximize the impact from the traits that you, the highly valuable traits that you have, or minimize the impact of other traits. So for instance, I need to be very organized because I'm generally not conscientious. I'm low in conscientiousness. So if, in order for me to, I suppose, avoid pitfalls of low conscientiousness, I have to keep track of the things I'm doing, make lists, and follow a schedule. And still, I'm not very good at this, I guess. Should be getting better. So I'm working on that. The way to work on yourself, I guess, probably the best one, really, outside of everything else, and also a way that has numerous fringe benefits, is to keep a journal. And if you keep a journal, you can use that journal to record your thoughts, to develop your thoughts, but also to identify things that you need to work on and that you could work on in order to improve yourself. So then you keep journals, you make time for important things. And also, I suppose what I'm going to add here is just if you find yourself overwhelmed, maybe something that you need to figure out is to learn to say no. And it might be difficult for you to say no because you're a person that is high in agreeableness, and people who are high in agreeableness generally tend to avoid confrontation. But it might be useful for you, and it might be long-term benefit for you to learn how to say no, because any action that you're doing because you haven't refused that action is a penalty upon something that you could do otherwise. So, you know, I need to be cleaning my room because, let's say my girlfriend is coming over or something like that, but I can't be doing that because my boss told me that I need to do the report that the boss should have done anyway. So maybe you wouldn't say no to your boss, but you would probably say no to your coworker. So learning to say no is something that might become a very useful thing to you, and might have to be developed as a skill. So another thing that I would like to suggest is, and again, that's probably not very easy to do, but it's something to keep in mind as you're growing in your personal self-development, let's say, is to optimize for flow. So flow is this idea that has been really introduced and developed by a Hungarian scientist called Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. Really weird and long name. So he noted that when people were engaged in activities that satisfied a couple of conditions, people really enjoyed those activities and actually had the maximum or the highest output for them at that given time. And the conditions for flow, so for that state of doing things, is that the activity needs to be sufficiently challenging. So it means that it is within your grasp, but you have to strain yourself a little bit. And it has to be something that's meaningful, so something that you find important, and it has to be something that aligns in a way with your values. That probably brings you closer to flow. And if you can find activities and develop ways of structuring your day-to-day life that you get more and more of those activities in front of you, you will find that your output is becoming higher. In order to achieve flow, for tasks that we have to do, especially if we find that we can't achieve flow for those tasks, is that we have to identify whether we have the sufficient amount of skills for that task, and then we have to identify the way in which to make those tasks meaningful. So flow kind of stems out of and into another psychological theory that is important for organizational management, called the self-determination theory. And essentially, the self-determination theory suggests that individuals find most fulfillment when they are engaged in activities that satisfy the conditions of mastery, purpose, and autonomy. So if you have, if you're in charge of yourself, if you're developing your skills, and you're developing those skills for some important objective, you will find fulfillment and enjoyment in the tasks that you're doing. And all that with view of maximizing the use of the time that you have available to you. So as you can see, the philosophy behind time management gets quite interesting and fairly intricate. And really, it's very well researched area. You know, flow, the big 5 personality traits, and the self-determination theory. So let's just keep going here. Oh yeah, this is an interesting one. So for any given objective, you can figure out a ways that will bring you closer to that objective. But for the same objective, you can also figure out ways in which you wouldn't. So things that if you did those things, like you would fail to get to your goal. So it's very nice. If I can identify things that if I do those things, I will never achieve my goal, I can just start avoiding them. I think I'm not sure if it was in Terry Pratchett's book or in something else. Like, you know, there was a suggestion that a person wanted to know not when are they going to die, but where, and then they would simply never go to that place because if they knew where they were going to die and they never went there, they would not die. So that's the via negativa idea. Find things that could prevent you from achieving your goal, and then avoid those things. Also, kind of outside of the via negativa, sometimes it's just good to ask, like, you know, for advice, or whether the task is needed, or, you know, questions in general tend to be helpful in achieving goals, not for just yourselves, but also for other people. And then last, kind of outside of the scope of this, your reputation is everything within a professional setting. And obviously, like, you know, you could probably achieve great things even if your reputation is not crystal, but it's probably best to keep your reputation crystal, which means you never break a promise. And if you find yourself that you are not in the position to break a promise, keep a deadline. And deadlines are essentially promises. You can try to negotiate. So never break a promise, but always renegotiate. So, you know, it's always good to be open about our ability to hold on to our word. So moving on from this one towards minimize distraction. It's kind of straightforward enough. Procrastination is a thief of time. And those of you who are on your phones during this lecture, you probably are guilty of this right now. You can stop smiling to yourself if you are, and if you're not, then I'm smiling to myself, just because those of you who were on your phones during this lecture, you know you've been procrastinating, you haven't been paying attention, and you probably missed some of the stuff that had been mentioned. But that's okay. I mean, the lecture is recorded, but I doubt that you will watch it anyway. However, it's recorded if you ever want to take a look at it in the near future. So put your phones away and stop distracting yourself. Like, even if your phone is in your vicinity, a tiny little portion of your brain is going to pay attention to whether a notification shows up. So if your phone is beside you and it's on silent, that's all right. That's, I suppose, the lesser evil. But if it's beside you and it's in loud, and, you know, you see notifications, then you can absolutely forget about remembering pretty much anything out of this lecture, just because your brain is distracted and it has no ability to focus on what's happening in here. So try to avoid procrastination and limit distractions, because they are a thief of time. So I think that I found the most useful for me to avoid distractions and prevent time theft is the Pomodoro technique. So the Pomodoro technique, is a super simple way of managing your time, where you set a timer, and within that timer, you just do the task that's in front of you. You do nothing else until the timer runs out or the task is completed. If either of that happens, the task is completed or the timer runs out, you take a break, and again you time your break. And during the break, you can do anything you want. You can indulge in the distractions, you can go check your phone, you can have chocolate, whatever, exercise. But then as the break timer runs out, you go back to doing the Pomodoro, which is, again, a short period of time of focused and concentrated work. And while you're doing those, obviously, you probably need to pay attention to all those other things that were suggested when talking about getting things done methodology. So your concentration levels, your energy levels, the time required for the task, and so on and so forth. Another thing in here that I'm going to suggest is that you should schedule time where you would have availability for distraction-free work. So if you're in an open office, for instance, you probably should try to find a meeting room where you can spend a day or 2 days a month or a day a week or something such, and you can just do work that doesn't require any distractibility, because the value output from deep work periods is going to be beyond anything achievable while you're being distracted. And think about it this way: um, if if you're at work and every 5 minutes you're being distracted, and the distraction takes 5 minutes, the four of those distractions will simply make an hour pass. If one of the, or two of those distractions take 10 minutes, then like it's an hour and a half, and all of a sudden you come into work, you were distracted 3 or 4 times by John, Jim, and Betty, and all of a sudden it's lunchtime, and you sit in front of your laptop and you realize that you haven't done anything. So it would be good to become aware of this and try to limit and minimize distractions. And those of you who are in open desk spaces, I'm sorry to hear that they are probably the worst for deep focused work. And a lot of companies that were so big on open spaces for work tend to, or there is a movement towards standard office cubicle, which is a way of preventing distractibility. And last thing in this slide is that multitasking doesn't work and doesn't exist. Human brain is not capable of holding on more than one task in mind at a given time. What you might think that you're able to multitask, but that's not really the case. What you're really able to do is to switch between the tasks that you're doing very fast. So those of you who are, those of you who drive and look at your phones, pay attention to how this is happening next time, because what you will notice is probably that you look up, you focus on driving, then you look down, you focus on your phone, look up, focus on driving. So you're not multitasking, you're switching tasks very fast. But the fact, like, for simple tasks like looking at your phone, it might work because there is really no lag in task switching. However, if you're multitasking while trying to do something that's really complex and complicated, you might find that there is some task switching penalty, which means that anytime you switch between task A and B, it takes you a little bit longer to achieve the same level of concentration on the task as before you switched to something else. So, just try to avoid these, because that means that your output was going to be higher. So as I was mentioning earlier, it would be good to keep a journal. This is an exercise that I might suggest to you, but you don't have to do it. If you're able to monitor your performance and how your day goes for 2 weeks, just noting what's happening every 15 minutes, like noting things. What am I doing right now? How do I feel? And any of the thoughts that that might happen. If you're able to do it every 15 minutes, obviously it's a huge expenditure of time and attention. It would help you to, first of all, identify your weak spots, and then maybe figure out a plan to fix those. But also it would help you to identify your strengths. Maybe you're very good at writing. Maybe you're very good at scheduling what you're doing. Maybe you're very good at communicating and organizing meetings and so on. So you could choose your tasks in such a way that you maximize the strengths that you have. Something to think about. Like journaling is a powerful method of self-improvement. Last couple of things are just about the importance of organization. And again, organization is super important for time management, because if you know where things are, you're not going to spend forever looking for. And for me, I'm an absolute disaster as far as this is concerned. Like, my phone, wallet, and my keys have a place where they belong, and they should go into every day. I have a little box on a shelf for keys, phone, and wallet. And I swear to God, like the amount of times, I would say probably about 7 to 10% of times where I'm actually supposed to put keys, phone, and wallet into the box, I actually do it. Just don't have the concentration for it. So again, as I said, I need to work on the conscientiousness side of things a little bit harder than an average person. So, if you can organize your space, it means that you will not have to spend time looking for things, which is a pain in the bum if if you're running late in the morning and you need to look for your wallet. So also, those of you who are familiar with lean methodology, there is a sentence in there which says a place for everything and everything in its place, which means that you'll never have to look for anything. As far as email is concerned, you probably need to, it kind of depends, I guess, what's your relationship with email. Younger people tend to have a slightly different one than the ones who have been born and grew up in the 90s. So email is not your to-do list, and you shouldn't keep the task that you do in your email. If you're writing an email, the recipient is a person that should be responsible, and you should only write emails if there is something actionable or a request in there. Otherwise, probably there is no need, or maybe communication of some vital information. Otherwise, there isn't really any need to write business emails. If you have a person responsible for whatever happens in an email, maybe it's valuable to CC someone that has a little bit of power, just to keep track of what's going on. And also, try to avoid blind carbon copy, the BCCs, because that's just, I suppose, a little bit not a little bit frowned upon, I guess. Things should be transparent in an office. But having said that, GDPR is a concern in here. So if you're ever sending a group email to people who might not know each other, always do it through BCC so that they don't see each other's addresses. And if you send an email with a request or with an action and you don't get a response, follow up, but no earlier than 48 hours after the email is sent, unless there is a time constraint on the project or on the activity that's mentioned in the email. Also, as far as emails are concerned, if you are putting emails into folders, you probably should stop doing that, because emails have, most of the emails now, actually all emails really, email programs and email websites have a very powerful search functionality, and you shouldn't tag or move your emails around in folders. You should just search for them, and that's probably I know, as far as organization is, it might go against what I mentioned, that everything is in its place, but search is faster than filing. And I have 2 more slides. Oh yeah, meetings, sure. So again, to maximize your time, only attend the meeting if there is an agenda, and if you're organizing the meeting, make sure that you put the agenda, and make sure that you, if in the agenda other people have to contribute to the meeting, make sure that they know that they're responsible. And I know it's easy to say, and especially in an organizational setting where there are personalities and there's also office politics, but it would be good if the meeting could stay on track according to the agenda. I suppose things that you could do in order to do it, it would be, keep the meetings behind closed doors so nobody can pop in. There should be no phones or laptops unless, person is presenting, or they need the laptop for the meeting purposes, which should be clear from the agenda and from the attendees list, let's say. If you could, do standing meetings, because once you sit down, your lazy turns on, and you mightn't participate in the meeting to the same extent as you would if you were standing up. So keep standing meetings are better. Keep it short and simple. KSS, also keep it simple, stupid, but keep it short and simple. 15 minutes is best. 30 minutes max for a meeting in the meeting room with a presentation. And really, if you have to have a 1 hour meeting, then I swear your agenda should be as detailed as possible, because 1 hour meeting is more than likely to be derailed and go off on tangent, and you'll come out from the meeting with a sensation that nothing that you wanted has been achieved. So the shorter the better. And also it would be actually very nice if you could have those nice little short 1 minute meetings where you can answer questions about who's doing, what are they doing, and when is it getting done, and that's it. Once that's done and you have a way of keeping track of this, then fantastic. You don't need the 15 or 30 minutes, which means you can use that you can use that time for some other purposes. Generally, in general, like meetings are evil and should be avoided. So to sum up, we talked about setting goals, planning. We talked about some of the tools that we can leverage in order to make our planning a little bit more efficient and to get the value out of the process. We talked about just what to do before doing, and I suppose the last sentence that I want to kind of put it into an overarching like as a constraint and limit around this is that really the purpose of this is that we should work towards long term. We should work towards balanced life of life of living and working, I guess, where the work that we're doing brings us meaning, and that would be ideal. Obviously, it can't happen for everyone, but if we take it as a goal for ourselves, it's more likely to happen for us. So that's it from me for today. So I will stay signed in for next for whatever the amount of time, and the floor is open for questions. And if you have a question that you would like to ask, please make sure to do it either with your microphone on, or you can type it into the chat box. The questions are not going to be recorded, so I just stopped the recording.